to do that. There we go. Thank you all for joining us. My name is Marcus Hanscom. I'm the Interim Director of Admission here at Bastyr University, and we appreciate you joining us tonight to talk a little bit about the Counseling Psychology program. And we have two of our program chairs joining us to tell you all about the faculty or about the academic side of the program. And then I'll jump in later on to tell you a little bit about admissions and financial aid, and we'll have some time for Q&A later on in the session. If you have questions as we go throughout, feel free to enter them in the questions box. And what we'll likely do is save most, if not all of them, to the end. But definitely enter them as we go through, and we'll make sure we get to them in that questions box. Without any further ado, I'd just like to pass it over then to our two program chairs, Dr. Dan Rosen, who is our program chair at the Kenmore campus outside of Seattle, and Dr. Sylvie Shuttleworth, who is down in San Diego. So I'm going to pass it over to you both. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you very much, and welcome everybody. We're so glad that you're here. We're delighted to be able to share about the MACP program in counseling psychology. We're super proud of this program and are looking forward to sharing with you both what we find most inspiring about it, and then to get to some of your questions as well. Briefly about myself, I've been at Bastyr for many years now, since 2008. So Bastyr has become my clear academic home. I live in Seattle, work up in Kenmore, have a small private practice in addition to being the department chair. And I think what I'd like you to know about me beyond that is that the reason that I chose Bastyr, which was a really big choice when I was looking for an academic job, is because I felt at home and resonant with the mission and vision of the place, right? We say that we will model the clinical integration of mind, body, and spirit, inclusive of our natural environment. And for me, as a psychologist and someone really interested in supporting the psychological health of others, I was inspired by the idea of being able to work alongside doctors and nutritionists and midwives and herbal scientists, and really be a part of a conversation about transforming the health and well-being of our human community, which is what our vision says that we're about. It felt like a risk, but as I say, many years later, I'm still here and I'm still inspired by what we're striving to do each day. My research as a psychologist is in the area of advancing the science of social connection in service of social issues like reduction of racial bias, improving community relationships, and addressing issues of isolation and loneliness in our community. And so I'm inspired by the idea that our science can actually help make things better and improve the lives of people in the community. I will stop there and hand things over to Dr. Sylvie Shuttleworth.
Thank you, Dr. Rosen, and thank you for that beautiful introduction. I feel very privileged to work alongside Dr. Rosen. So I'm at the San Diego campus and he's at the Kenmore campus. But one of the beautiful things is we truly have parallel programs, and we talk every single week and make sure that we're delivering similar work, a similar program with a similar emphasis. And it's just nice to know that there's that collaboration across campuses. So even if you're deciding between campuses, know that there's quite a bit of collaboration across campuses. So I have been at Bastyr University since 2014, so just over 10 years now. And similar to Dr. Rosen, actually, before I took a position at Bastyr University, I had worked at some of the other larger universities here in the San Diego area. And this campus had just opened up, and similar to Dr. Rosen, I took a bit of a risk when I took this position because it was a brand new university here in San Diego. It had been well established in Washington State, but I was so drawn to it, and I'm truly pleased with my decision because my personal values and how I choose to live my life have aligned beautifully with the values and the mission statement of the university. So it feels very, very comfortable, very at home, and I feel authentic and genuine when I'm in my administrative leadership positions or teaching, because the things I'm communicating and the things I'm instructing on align with my own personal values as well. In terms of my research and publication areas, I've written and published in the areas of attachment theory, supervision. I do forensic work, so I focus on law and ethics. I've also published in the area of substance abuse treatment. And actually, more recently, Dr. Rosen and I collaborated on a project related to having more representation from underrepresented groups in the mental health system and as providers. So that's been a wonderful recent collaboration as well. So very excited to spend the next hour or so with you all and talk a little bit more in depth about our program. So you already get the sense from how Dr. Rosen and I have been introducing ourselves, and also probably why you're sitting in this webinar right now. You were drawn to Bastyr University. If I had to guess, one of the reasons is because we very clearly and directly talk about a mind, body, spirit integration. We talk about how, yes, we have a mental health focus, so much more on the emotional and the mental side, but we don't do that without accounting for what is happening physically within an individual, what is going on spiritually, and how does all of this integrate to impact their quality of life. We also have a focus on not only looking at the individual impact that we have with our clients, our patients, and with each other, but the idea that with that investment that we have with our clients, that in turn is shaping and transforming the health and well-being of the human community. That effect that, you know, this one positive experience or interaction with one individual then spills over into another individual. So making that more transformative impact on seeing ourselves as part of a collectivistic, larger human community. So you get the sense of kind of thematically what we're talking about, this integrative, holistic approach, taken in not only your educational and your classroom experiences, but then that'll also, we'll talk a little bit later how that translates into your clinical experience as well, and the more experiential components.
All right, so on the next slide, you will see the mission statement of our MACP program and the department. And it states the counseling and health psychology programs seek to educate our students and as professionals in counseling psychology who are competent in integrated models of health and wellness. By promoting the highest standards of ethical practice, we will enhance the health and well-being of the human community, including ourselves. So let's start at the end, right? We believe that in the context of a 2-year program in Masters of Counseling, you are going through a process not only of skill development, but also of personal and professional transformation, that the self, you, are being trained and educated to support people in the room. And I think it's, whereas other fields might be able to be a little bit more technical or even reliant on AI, for example, it's less possible in the context of one-on-one counseling, especially when a lot of what is happening is generated between you and your client in the room. And so by design, the 2 years of the program has a focus on building self-awareness, building up your resources and your capacity and your confidence in being able to hold space for another person and supporting them on what they are up to in their life. So that is, you could say, work that's done from the inside out. I don't want to overemphasize that. You are being trained within a professional setting. There are academic, for sure, guidelines and aspects of our program overall, but it's very personal work, and I think that's part of what we need to bring out. So the aspirations we have for health and well-being aren't just for other people, they're also for us. I think that's mostly what I mean to say there. And the other piece I just want to call out from this philosophy statement here, this mission statement here, is that what Dr. Shuttleworth was naming a moment ago, this integration of mind, body, spirit, is synthesized in complement with scientific rigor. So it's not as though you need to leave behind core aspects of psychological counseling, science, and theory. You will get all of that. What we do is synthesize an incredibly strong foundation within the field of counseling psychology with this enhanced holistic perspective that Dr. Shuttleworth named a moment ago.
Thank you. Okay, so what we want to highlight next is, again, we talked about transforming the human community and how we are part of this larger collectivistic group. And so what is the community impact? Well, first of all, we are equipping and training you with the basic and fundamental counseling skills needed. For example, the empathy, the compassion, so that you can sit with people when they're in their most vulnerable states, telling you their most private moments, and that you have the skills and the techniques to manage that and to have them feel supported, heard, validated, so that you can make a meaningful impact, not only for them in that facilitator guided role, but also then remembering as we impact one individual, now they're going back and impacting their smaller communities that then impact the next circle outside of that. So we talked about this a little bit, but we want to train and teach you to have a comfort level and ease so that you can sit with people when they are in these deeply emotional states, to help ease their pain and suffering. Now, of course, within counseling, it's not all pain and suffering. You're also connecting with people's, joys and contentment and their successes. But we want to make sure that you're prepared for the whole gamut, whatever's sitting in front of you, to support people to have a sense of inner peace, a sense of functioning that they feel comfortable with, a purposeful life. With all that being said, one of the beautiful things is that this in turn is very rewarding work for you as an individual. I mean, if you're looking for something that's going to give you personal meaning, purpose in life, this is a beautiful field. And I've been so happy with my own career choice, and what I've chosen to do with my occupational side of my identity. So graduates are trained to act also as community advocates, ensure that people have access to high quality and culturally responsive service. And that's something that's very important to us, to make sure that there is equity and equality there. And we can talk more about how that even plays into our own personal clinic and how we use lower fees to increase accessibility of service.
All right, so some of the nuts and bolts. Wow, my screen just went dark. Let me see if I can get back on here. That was sort of extraordinary. I think in the room above me, people are making chocolate cupcakes. So there may have been a chocolate cupcake power surge that we just experienced. Hopefully we're good to go. So some of the nuts and bolts, the program. So it is a 2-year program, which consists of 93 quarter credits. We're on a quarter system, which some of you may know and may be less familiar to others. The program is designed to be completed within 2 years' time. And when we say 2 years, we mean actually, the 24 months, so not beyond 2 years. So the program would start, if you joined us in our next cohort, in July of 2025. And then you would graduate in June of 2027, which sounds like a far-off futuristic date, but amazingly is not that far away. Our program is designed to prepare you to be licensed eligible as a master's level counselor. Now, you may know that each state sets its own requirements for what is needed to become licensed at a master's level. We have our programs in Washington State, in California, and we have designed our program, even though these requirements vary by state, to give our graduates the most mobility possible if they want to move throughout the country. So depending on where you want to end up, for example, we have people joining us from Washington, from New York, from Florida. we can talk with you individually about what that would mean for you, but know that it's a robust program that, and we have graduates licensed in a great number of states. We are also very proud that in addition to our university regional accreditation, Bastyr itself is a regionally accredited university with the Secretary of Education through the NWCCU. We are also professionally accredited by MPCAC, which is Masters in Psychology and Counseling Accreditation Council. And that means that we have gone through, Dr. Shuttleworth and I, a multi-year process where we have done the work to demonstrate that our program meets standards and excellence in delivery of very specific objectives and goals that our program is designed to deliver. It included something like an appendix with 285 documents and thousands upon thousands of pages, which we will not make you read. But if you ever wanted to, you would know that this is a program that has been very carefully considered. And as we begin to go through some of the curriculum, we hope what you'll see is the ways specifically that we deliver on many of our aspirational values within the field.
Okay, so we put quite a bit of thought into how we developed and designed the actual logistics of when the courses are offered. So we do have a special evening course format. Courses, you take so let me step back. Dr. Rosen mentioned that we're on a quarter system. What that means is 11 weeks. Throughout the year, you'll have 4 11-week quarters. In those quarters, you have classes on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday only. And to keep things clear for you, you take 3 classes a quarter. You literally have 1 class on Tuesday, 1 on Wednesday, and 1 on Thursday. San Diego classes are 3:30 to 7:20 p.m. and Kenmore, Washington classes are 4 p.m. to 7:50 p.m. Those times are chosen because we're very thoughtful about people commuting in cities and getting to class at 3:30 and getting out at 7:20. You will be missing the majority of San Diego traffic, and the same thing goes for Washington. So we try to strategically design these times to support you, and we did the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, so you have that more intense focus on those 3 days, but then you have a bit more flexibility. Like if we're going away for the weekend, Friday through Monday, you have that flexibility built in, and it can help to really build some nice work-life balance for you. The focus, we do have a depth of experience, and we'll show you that in a little bit more detail when we go into the specific curriculum, but we incorporate experiential learning and pretty early on compared to some other programs. So some other master's programs you will see are over 3 years. We do the intensive 2 years so that we can get you out there and in the field and making your salary sooner than later. And we actually have you engaging in clinical practice in your first year. So that's a bit more rare. So in the spring quarter of your first year, you will be doing rotations in our Bastyr University clinic under live supervision of a licensed mental health professional. And then before that, with your Fundamentals of Counseling course, in your very first quarter, you'll be doing role plays, reporting yourselves, like really making sure you have the confidence starting to build up so that you can sit with your first patient. And we ease you in. You'll have 1 or 2 patients on that clinic shift that are just yours that you have live supervision with. Then in your second year, and we guide you through the practicum experience. What I mean by guide you through it is we have a list of approved practicum sites. I am the clinical training director for the San Diego campus. There's a clinical training director for the Washington campus. We meet with you, we talk with you, we guide you on which sites might match your interests and needs. And you're not just left to go find a practicum site. We have very close relationships with the practicum sites. So then in your second year, you will be doing a community-based clinical rotation that will last 9 to 10 months throughout your second year, where on top of the 3 classes you're taking, you will be at a practicum placement for about 20 hours a week. And this is so important for your clinical training and experience, and also a requirement for your license eligibility moving forward. On the hybrid learning, this is predominantly an in-person program, and we do that because we feel that with the type of skills and the training that we are providing you, that is best done with human-to-human connection in the room. With that being said, we know that there's limits and capacity to how much an individual can take in and for how many hours. So we do, some of the classes are 4.5 credits, where you'll have 4 hours of in-person, but then we do the last half hour with discussion boards and distance learning on our online learning platform of Canvas to balance out, so you're not sitting in class for 4.5 hours, and you have a variety of learning opportunities and experience.
All right, so let's take a look at our curriculum. One of the things that probably you've gathered from what Dr. Shuttleworth has been sharing is that this is a program that first and foremost is designed to provide education and training for excellent clinicians. So we have students each year that engage with faculty on research projects, and we'd love to talk with you, maybe even endlessly, about your research ideas and our research ideas, but that's not a requirement of the program. The program is really set about to support you in developing the clinical skills that you'll need upon graduation. We have 2 slides to go over year 1 and year 2 of the curriculum, and I won't talk about each and every course, but what I do want to make clear from the curriculum, you will see, if you're looking at multiple programs, that some of the same courses are going to show up again and again. So for example, if we look at the summer course, the 5402 relationship and interview, a clinical interviewing course is going to be a required course in almost every program that you see. In the fall, you can see lifespan development and ethics. In the winter, you see statistics and multicultural counseling. In the spring, you see psychopathology. These are the foundational courses of any 2-year program, a master's program in counseling. And what we want you to know about these courses is that you will get a rigorous scientific and theoretical foundation in counseling. And in each of those courses, we are going to be looking through the integrative lens that we've been speaking about since the start of our talk, which is that integration of mind, body, and spirit. So it's not hopefully, even if these are very mainstream, forward-looking counseling practices, we deliver them in a way that is enhanced by, we believe, an appreciation for whole person health and whole person healing. In addition to this strong foundation we provide, you'll see other classes that you probably won't see, at least in totality, across another program. So when you enter in the summer, there's a course titled Mind-Body Approaches to Health Psychology, where we introduce our students to interventions in mind-body medicine and whole person health that can be used both to support clients, but also for one's own self-care throughout the next 2 years of the program. In the fall, we have a specific course designed in biopsychosocial approaches to whole person healing, which looks both at a case conceptualization model inclusive of biology, psychology, social and spiritual aspects, and also an inquiry into systems of traditional and indigenous healing that have existed throughout millennia. So we really try to take a broad framing of the very specific practice of modern counseling and psychotherapy. And then you can look to the spring, where we have courses in trauma counseling. And you'll see as we move to the year 2 of the program. Oh, before we do that, I'll just say one other thing. A moment ago, Dr. Shuttleworth called out that even in the first year, students are doing the hands-on clinical work. And if you look at spring quarter in the lower right-hand quadrant, you see that clinical experience 1. That is the quarter where we begin to provide hands-on clinical experience in the Bastyr clinics where you would be meeting one-on-one with your own clients. So as we go to the year 2, I'll hand it over to Dr. Shuttleworth with an invitation to sort of look and see if you can guess which are the courses that are more of the standard counseling program courses and which are really sort of designed to emphasize the mission of the program.
Thanks, Dr. Rosen. And going, like, for example, something I wanted to mention, like the trauma course, for instance, that is in year 1. One of the required readings that we normally have in that class is the book, The Body Keeps the Score. So just an example of how we're integrating that mind, body, spirit connection. The clinical experience in our very own Bastyr clinic continues into the summer quarter. That's your clinic experience 2. When you have the classes on substance abuse and addictions and the chronic and terminal illness, again, there's huge opportunity there to talk about the spiritual side of things, the physical side of things, and how that interplays with the emotional, cognitive pieces. You'll have your assessment, family systems courses. I want to show you the practicum and practicum seminar 1, 2, and 3. You'll see that that's fall, winter, and spring quarters. This is one of my favorite classes to teach because you can really see the integration, the students bringing everything together in these courses. This is a course that goes hand in hand with your practicum experience that you're doing in the community. This is basically group supervision and consultation on campus with a group of students, no more than 8 students in your cohort, where you will be presenting your cases, audio and video recordings of the work that you're doing, full clinical case write-ups to support your presentation. And we stop, we watch these recordings, we take notes, we talk about, what really worked well there, suggestions for what you might try next time. And it's just beautiful because you really see the development and the growth in yourself as a student, where you were kind of a bit more raw and greener in those first few quarters. And now in your second year, you're really synthesizing and bringing everything together and taking on the role of consulting with your fellow students and colleagues related to your practicum community clinical experience. You'll have research methods and career counseling in the winter quarter. The psychology of human sexuality is a beautiful course that we bring in the spring quarter. Again, huge opportunity for mind, body, spirit emphasis, and your psychopharmacology, so that you can have an understanding and a knowledgeable conversation with your clients about medications they may be prescribed, be aware of side effects, all of that sort of thing. I just want to highlight before we move on the exit exam. Dr. Rosen mentioned this earlier. We are more of a clinically focused master's program. There are also more research focused master's programs. So we are designed to be a bit more of there's research opportunity, but ultimately we're more of a clinically focused program. What that means is in exiting the program, you will be doing an exit exam or a clinical competency exam versus a thesis. So you would not do a thesis in this master's program, you would do a clinical competency exit exam. Thank you.
All right, so Dr. Shuttleworth has already done an excellent job of outlining the clinical experience, but here is a nice slide just summarizing it. So there are 2 main pieces of clinical training throughout the program. One is the Bastyr University clinic shifts, and as we mentioned, these happen in the spring of your first year and the summer of your second year. You're operating within a Bastyr clinic, which is an integrative care model setting, meaning that you're working alongside naturopathic physicians. Sometimes on the Seattle side of things, that would include nutritionists and acupuncturists. You will see a wide variety of clients, both in terms of demographic diversity and also presenting issues. It's a community health clinic, so there are a lot of opportunities to support community members in a variety of areas. And you would be supervised by a Bastyr licensed both faculty and clinician. So that's again in the spring and summer of that first year. And then beginning fall of year 2, that is when you go from the confines of the university and our clinics and our supervisors out into the community with all the support in getting there that Dr. Shuttleworth mentioned. You had multiple options. So this is often a time where people who have a particular passion and interest in working with a specific population, let's say kids, or adolescents or elders, or perhaps across the whole age span, are choosing very intentionally where they want to be and the work that they want to do. Both in San Diego and in Seattle, we have affiliations with over 100 sites between the two campuses. And we have a very good reputation in the community because we have excellent students, which is why you're here to join us. The practicum experience itself it typically is a 700-hour experience, which translates, as Dr. Shuttleworth mentioned, to about 18 to 20 hours a week. And then it is paired with, as Dr. Shuttleworth mentioned as well, that practicum seminar course. So you'll be out in the community, working with a field supervisor, getting excellent clinical training, and then once a week, we'll be with a small group of students, a group of 7 other students, and your practicum seminar faculty, really debriefing and consulting and going deep into the support that you'll need to have a meaningful experience in that practicum year.
All right, thank you. And I talked a little bit about earlier how this line of work, and I'll speak for myself, but I think many of my colleagues would echo what I'm about to say. And I mentioned it before, it's very rewarding work. It's very meaningful work. So that is a beautiful part of this in and of itself. There's also the reality that you do want to make sure, because you're looking at investing time, money, and energy, that this is something that can also provide for you, and that there are job opportunities once you graduate, and that there's a livelihood behind this. And it's really been wonderful that there's been a decrease in mental health stigma. There's been a decrease in the stigma of seeking out mental health support. You see more people across a variety of different cultural, racial, and demographic groups seeking out mental health services and support. With that being said, there has been a statement made in terms of looking at job opportunities and what is available. Mental health has been growing, and it's expected to grow 19% over the next decade. With our graduates and our students, there haven't been any issues with people finding any jobs or anything like that. It really comes down to what job do they want once they graduate. So I think that's an important consideration. Our program does prepare you for licensure, and I think that's something for you to consider when you look at programs, because there are psychology-based counseling master's programs, but really looking at which ones are license eligible. So for example, we went through a rigorous process where the Board of Behavioral Sciences in California, where we applied and they reviewed the entire curriculum, and we are board approved for licensure, our program, our curriculum for the LPCC. I don't want you to get nervous, because each state is going to call this license something slightly different. You'll see the LMHC, the LPC, the LPCC, the licensed mental health counselor, licensed professional counselor, licensed professional clinical counselor. They're all pretty much equivalent, but each state has its own licensing board. So we just encourage you to look at whatever state you think you might be moving to or practicing in after you graduate, and their guidelines and maybe what they're calling that licensure. You become license eligible because of the curriculum and the courses that you're taking. And we work to make sure that you have the basic required coursework, the supervised experience, the clinical hours. Once you do your minimum 700 pre-graduate hours, each state typically has postgraduate hours that you will be completing as well, and a licensure exam post-graduation. Let's see, I think that's the big piece related to outcomes and licensure. And just again, Dr. Rosen mentioned it before, but it's going to vary state by state. We've had students licensed in multiple states, obviously lots of students licensed in Washington and California, but we'll just mentor you and guide you to look at your particular state's licensing board to make sure that everything's lining up for you and what licensure name they decided for your particular state.
All right, I'm going to jump in and talk to you a little bit about the application process if you're considering applying for the program. And this will vary a little bit for some of you depending on where you are in your journey right now. So we'll talk predominantly about this coming year. The application actually just opened for the summer 2025 term. One thing that we are going to be flexing, or at least becoming more flexible on, is the ability to potentially apply a little bit sooner than that if you wish. Now, thankfully for your program, there's not a lot of prerequisites, so you don't have to be planning well in advance like some of our more science-focused programs at Bastyr. So the application typically opens the first week of September for the subsequent year. So it is open now. I learned there was a technical issue, I think, yesterday. So if it's not available to you when you try to log in, give it about a week and we should have everything fixed for you. So students are expected to have a degree in psychology or related field. In some cases, students have course background in psychology, but maybe not the degree in psychology explicitly. We're looking for a cumulative GPA of a 2.75 or higher, but the caveat I would add, and I think this is particularly true with Dr. Shuttleworth and Dr. Rosen, is that we take a very holistic view at your academic portfolio. And if you're coming right out of school, if you're a senior in college now and you struggled academically and maybe at a 1-point GPA, that's a pretty different conversation than, let's say, somebody who is maybe 40 years old with 20 years experience and has worked in a connected field and has done some really good things, and academically, just on paper, you weren't as strong. That's a little different conversation when we're talking about a lot of years of experience and maturity and fit for the program. So as much as the 2.75 is listed as kind of a minimum requirement there, we don't discourage you from applying. We want you to think about that. Talk with us earlier on before you apply if you want to. Talk about your GPA, your work experience, other volunteer experience you may have, things that are relevant to the program so that we can give you some appropriate guidance on whether this will be a good option for you. And please note, this is not a gatekeeping exercise. This is really about making sure that, as Dr. Shuttleworth talked about, this is an investment, significant investment of time and money. And you want to make sure that you're doing that in a way that you're going to be successful in the program. We certainly don't want you to get a quarter in or a couple of quarters in and you're struggling academically, and then you ultimately leave the university, and then you're leaving with a lot of debt and not the outcome that you wanted. So we want to be fair to you and really look at the outcomes that you're going to have and make sure you're going to be successful. And that's a very deliberate process on behalf of the faculty, particularly in the counseling program. And part of the experience here as you go through the application process will be an interview. And so we're really looking to assess your fit for the program and certainly the fit for the industry. And being that you're going to be a future counselor and working with patients, there's a little bit more deliberate discernment in that process as you're applying, versus like the MBA program that I went through, and whether you can do accounting or not is a little different than if you're working with a client that has significant challenges and needs your support and empathy. So in addition to your application, we do ask for a brief personal statement. You also have to have at least an intro to psych course with a B or better within the last 7 years. And if you have circumstances that are kind of like you took it 9 years ago or something, talk with us and we can give you some advisement on whether you should use a refresher course or do something different. And then, as I mentioned, you'll have an interview with the faculty, and Dr. Shuttleworth and Dr. Rosen are certainly central to that, depending on the campus that you're going to be applying for. And as you know, we have both the Kenmore campus outside Seattle and the San Diego campus. We have some program deadlines that they're particularly important for counseling psych. There's our November early application deadline, and then January 10th is the priority deadline. You'll see a final deadline there, but my caution to you is this. The early application and priority deadlines that schools have, and Bastyr is not any different, is that you're going to get priority for institutional financial aid. So if there's any scholarships, like there's an honor scholarship opportunity that we provide for students in their first year, you have to apply by those earlier deadlines. Unlike federal loans, which don't dry up because they're loans and you're paying them back, institutional aid is a finite amount of money, and that money is divvied out earlier in the process. So if you're serious about applying for the program and want to be considered, you definitely want to apply early and get those aid opportunities. That doesn't mean you have to come to Bastyr, but I always encourage students to apply sooner so that you can, especially if you're looking at multiple schools, it's really good to be sitting in February or March before you have to commit to a program to have all 3 of the programs you're applying to, lay them out and say, which one's a good fit for me, which one's giving me a good financial opportunity, weighing out a decision that's really well informed. And we don't pressure you into making a decision early on. There are some schools that will do that, so be aware of that. We really want you to make an educated decision and decide on what's going to be a good fit for you, and ultimately apply for the right program. So we encourage you to really get in there sooner. The one thing we can't guarantee for you is that, especially once we get past January and that priority deadline, that if we hit capacity, we could hit capacity in February, we could hit it in March. And so if you're applying later and toward that summer deadline, we can't guarantee that there'll be any space available for you. And unfortunately, because it's only a start of once per year, you'd have to wait another year to start the program, even if you're admissible. So we always encourage students to apply early, talk with us. I always say too, the only bad questions are the ones you don't ask. So please talk to the faculty, talk to the enrollment advisors, make sure that you're making a good educated decision on both applying, but also your next steps if you're admitted, if you choose to come to Bastyr. So talk with us, and our enrollment team is really going to be a great asset for you as you go through the process. So you're going to apply online, pretty straightforward. It's on our admissions page, or you can go directly to apply.bastyr.edu. In addition to the requirements that I listed on that past screen, you don't have to submit letters of recommendation or references, and you don't have to submit GRE scores or any other test scores. That's a pretty nice perk for especially some of the programs I've worked with in the past in mental health counseling and psychology that require GREs. It's just another hurdle. Many of them require a lot of references and those types of things. Bastyr has been very deliberate in making sure that you have opportunities to be considered for the program without unnecessary barriers. And that's important for access and diversity, as you've heard throughout this session. And it's really critical to the mission of what Bastyr does. And the interview gives us that opportunity to really gauge your interest and your fit for the program beyond what we can see on paper. And so it's a holistic approach without any unnecessary challenges or barriers in the process. We do require you to submit official transcripts, and this is true of any graduate program you're applying to. Anywhere that you've earned college level credit, you need to submit transcripts for. Now, one thing that we've started doing this year, and we welcome you to do if it's easier for you, you can submit unofficial transcripts during the application process. If you don't want to pay for transcripts multiple times, and again, that's a barrier to many students, but if you can get a copy of your transcript off your portal or you have access to it in other means, we can use that for your admission decision. However, once you get further in the process, if you're admitted and you decide you're going to come to Bastyr, we'll need all of your official transcripts, including that final official transcript with your bachelor's degree on it. That's going to be your #1 priority as far as your transcripts go. So we'll need all of those as you get further in the funnel. But for now, the unofficial transcripts are okay. We'll also be communicating your application status with you regularly, and we will be making a system change on the application side in the spring. So if you're applying to us in the springtime, you'll have some other opportunities through a portal and things to check your status and get updates. And as a thank you for you all coming tonight and spending time with us, although I guess it's afternoon for some of you, it's later here on the East Coast. We are going to waive your application fee. So write down that code, and it's not one easy to remember necessarily. So write that down, future Bastyrian, and that will waive your application fee. So just a little token of our appreciation for you spending some time with us tonight and learning about the program. If you forget that, feel free to reach out to any of us and we can give that to you. But love to waive your application fee. Once you submit your application and your transcripts, we will then review that within admissions and then also connect you with the faculty. Our strong applicants will be referred to interview. And then you have that opportunity to really kind of show how and demonstrate how you're going to be a good fit. And I welcome actually Dr. Shuttleworth or Dr. Rosen, if you're willing, to share any insights you have on the interview process and what kinds of things students might want to be preparing for if they were invited to interview.
I feel like I'm now in an interview, Marcus. I wasn't prepared for your question. It's a great question. I think that One thing that we have noticed over the years is that people don't typically end up at Bastyr University by accident. So whereas for some other programs, it's just sort of a generic degree in counseling and it looks the same as another one and it, is sort of hard to distinguish it, it's much less true for a university like ours that is really adherent to a set of values and mission and vision. So consistently, what we're really looking to hear and understand is that you have made a deliberate choice, that you know what you're looking for, that there is a match or a goodness of fit between what you're looking for, and meaning like your aims as a future professional, inclusive of your awareness of what it means to be a counselor, with the unique opportunities for education and training that are available within the MACP program. So there really isn't much to prep. You'll have already submitted your personal statement. We are really just wanting to get to know you. So it is not a performance. It is really a conversation. It's within a group interview format. And so we're just curious to get to know you and to assess in both directions. You're assessing us, we're assessing you. Is there a good fit between what you're looking for and what we provide?
Great. Thanks for that. And sorry for the off the cuff, but I figured we would talk a little bit about that. I think that's important. And I think what Dr. Rosen shared, I've had the opportunity over 18 years to work with other universities around the country and similar kind of approaches where they want somebody to really articulate why they're a good fit for that program. And not everybody else's, but that program. And particularly with Bastyr, how there's such a unique distinction to what's being offered in this program compared to other more generic counseling programs. This is a really good opportunity for you to articulate that. I think the other thing I would suggest is really to understand how important inclusion efforts and equity efforts are to you. That's a core part of the mission at Bastyr. And I think really understanding what the mission and values of Bastyr and particularly this program are, and being able to articulate how you fit into that mission. Because as much as you're looking for fit, we're looking for fit too. We want to have students that are really going to resonate with us. Ideally, we want to bring in students that we know when they graduate are going to make us look really good. We want you to be a high performing graduate, get a great job, do amazing counseling work, and then people go, man, those people coming out of Bastyr really know their stuff. So we really want that to be not only about Bastyr and reputational things, although that's great, but knowing that we're making a deep impact on the community at large and knowing why our work is important. And I think Dr. Shuttleworth really spoke to that, is that obviously the nature of counseling psychology is that you want to make that level of impact. And we want to put counselors out on the street that really can do that and do it in a way that resonates well with our mission. So hopefully you can articulate that throughout your process in the coming months and years. So if you're admitted, so you get through all of those gates that we just talked about, and it's not a performance, but you make everybody feel good about your commitment to the program. We say apply for financial aid here, but my caution here, especially if you're applying later in the funnel, but I encourage you to do that sooner. But you can apply for financial aid really at any time, and I'll talk more about that in a second. But the FAFSA you can complete that while you're applying for the academic program while you're doing as well. We just can't provide an aid package for you prior to you getting an admission decision. So you can apply and that'll just sit with our financial aid office, but that allows them to process more quickly if they have it on file. You will see a March 1 priority deadline floating around for financial aid. So that's just really is processing, but it doesn't mean you can't get aid. It's just that that's the ideal timeline to have that in. If you ultimately decide you're coming to Bastyr, then you'll have an enrollment commitment deposit, and then we'll set you up with your accounts and get you all set up with that. And then you'll need your final official transcripts, as we talked about before. Now, obviously, financing your education is going to be a really important consideration for you. And at the graduate level, it's a little different from undergrad. So I'll get into the weeds on that in a second. For those of you who have taken any sort of loans in the past from the federal government, you've probably filled out the FAFSA prior to now. It's the free application for federal student aid. You can fill that out. It's available. I believe it's available now. So you can get that started if you wanted to, if you're applying for next year. You don't have to do it quite this early, so I don't need you to feel any sense of urgency with that comment, but at some point in the early spring, that's the time to get that moving. The earlier you do it, the better, just in case in some instances, you might be asked to provide additional documentation, whether that be proof of employment, financial history, bank statements, other things that you may not be traditionally required to submit as part of the FAFSA. So giving yourself extra time to do that and not panicking 2 days before class starts is really a good thing. So sooner the better on this and applying for your program. Now, one thing, unfortunately, and this changed about 10 years ago or so, was that graduate subsidized loans, so where your interest doesn't accrue, got taken away, and that was for kind of need-based aid. And if you're used to things like Pell Grants or any kind of subsidized loans at the undergraduate side that are based on financial need, those are no longer an option as a graduate student. Graduate students only qualify for financial aid based on well, it's not even merit. It's based on your credit worthiness in some cases. The first loan is the federal direct unsubsidized loan. You might have heard Stafford loan in the past. That's an old term. It's no longer called that, but it essentially is the same program. That one is not credit dependent. So every student qualifies for that first loan of $20,500 you see there on the screen. That covers you annually. Now, the important thing with counseling psych in particular is because you have summer coursework, you can get aid for that fourth quarter also. Many of our students are taking classes fall, winter, spring. In your case, you're doing fall, winter, spring, summer, or rather summer, fall, winter, spring. I'm not used to that backwards. So you're going to be able to take additional aid to cover your courses in that fourth quarter. So don't fret on that. But at the base, everyone will qualify for $20,500 to cover 3 of your quarters. Current interest rate's about 7%. That will change annually. And because the Fed's signaling they're dropping interest rates, that should be good for your loans next year. So keep that in mind. There is a lifetime borrowing limit of this particular loan just to keep you from over borrowing. But this is the lower interest rate of the 2 loans that you have available to you as a graduate student. So once you fill out the FAFSA and you get your aid package, you know you're going to have $20,500 right off the bat without any questions asked for a loan. Beyond that, you have the option to take the plus loan. Now, there's no lifetime borrowing limit on this one. This is one that Congress is always fretting about in the news. You've probably heard about that. They're trying to protect students from over borrowing. So we always caution students on making sure you only take what you need for your financial needs. But this allows you to borrow up to what we call the total cost of attendance. There's a number that Best Year will put together for you in the financial aid office, and that includes your tuition, and then an estimate for room and board, meals, room and board, books, and transportation, and then what they call miscellaneous expenses, which are things related to your study that could be any number of things, including food, including just general expenses for your living and so on. So that number essentially acts as a cap that your direct unsubsidized loan, the $20,500, and then the balance can be in the plus loan. So let's say you have a $50,000 total cost of attendance. I'm just making up a number because that's not the official number. You get $20,000 through that other loan, and the plus loan is about $30,000 that you'll be able to take. So out of those 2 loans, you could borrow your full cost of attendance if you need it. And that's helpful because especially if you're picking up and moving across the country and you need help with getting an apartment, or you're living on campus and you need to pay for your own board. In some cases, if you're living in the area, maybe you're giving up full-time employment if you're already working. So you need to be able to have expenses or money to cover your expenses while you're in school. All these things are available to you through these loan programs. One difference with this loan is that it's 1 percentage point higher. So it's just a little bit more costly from an interest perspective. The other thing that's important is that while that first loan I showed you comes to everybody, this second one does have a credit check tied to it. So if you have any credit issues, there's a potential you won't qualify for this loan. So just keep that in mind. I will say overall, the graduate loans through the government are generally the most flexible and among the better interest rates you'll find of any loan programs. You can certainly go to your banks, go to your credit unions. They usually want their money a little bit sooner when you're paying back. They may or may not have a competitive interest rate. So these are all things to consider as you're planning your finances for your graduate programs. Now, I mentioned a little bit about this before. Your aid is intended to be covering related expenses to you being in school. And so that definition is fairly wide. it's not intended, and I'll show you some of the not intended lists, but it's not intended for things aside from, if you're trying to pay bills, pay credit card bills, and that's not what aid is intended for. You're really supposed to be covering expenses, food, your housing, transportation to and from class. If you need childcare, especially if you're trying to take classes and juggle having somebody watch your children, that's an option there too. But noting all of that, this is more of an honor code. This is an ethics question than it is. Nobody's going to come chase you and ask for a line item. How did you spend your loans? Your money is provided to you. It's essentially applied to your bill. And then any money that you've requested that's beyond your bill is required by law to be given to you in a refund. And so that refund money then you take and use for these various expenses. So you do have to be responsible with that money as well. I've seen students not be very diligent with that money, and then they run out and then they're like, oh, I need more money. And you can't just go and appeal for more financial aid because you ran out of money. You have to have a very explicit reason for doing so. But as I mentioned, it can't be used for things. And I love financial aid. Put the puppy picture. That was not me. But it can't be go get a dog with your financial aid money. It's not meant for businesses, those types of things. I don't think most of this you're going to run into. But just consider the things that you really need while you're in school and take your loans for that purpose. And remember that because these are not subsidized loans that you may be familiar with from undergrad, your interest will accrue from the minute you take the loan. So you don't have a deferral and when your interest starts. So if you have the ability, especially if you're working part-time, you have a little bit extra money, if you can just pay your interest while you're in school, that way that's not accruing on top of itself and you're getting a really uncomfortable loan payment later on. So if you have the ability to do that, that's recommended. You do have the 6-month grace period after you graduate. So if you're used to that in undergrad, we have a 6-month period where you're trying to find work and do those types of things. You don't have to start paying your loans back until 6 months later. And then if you have further questions on all of this, we can certainly connect you with the financial aid folks. There are, with the federal loan programs, one thing I like, and this is particularly helpful for counseling psych. There is a public service loan forgiveness program that you may be aware of. If you work at a nonprofit organization or a government organization, after 10 years, you can have the balance of your loans forgiven as long as you're in certain loan repayment programs. So you have to make sure you're paying attention to what those are and you make regular payments for 10 years. Aside from that, there are a number of graduated programs, fixed programs from anywhere from 5, 10 to 30 years. We don't encourage 30 years. That's an awfully long time to be paying back your loans. 10, 15, 20, even 25 are more common for most students. And you also have the option that if you were to graduate and let's say you're just starting out and you're trying to get your hours for your license and so on, maybe you're not making your ideal salary yet because you haven't gotten fully licensed, but then you get a nice bump when you get licensed. You could have these repayment programs that allow you to have a graduated payment based on your income. And so those are available in the graduate loan programs through the government. They aren't necessarily involved or available in your private loan options if you wanted. So definitely look into these options to make things a little bit more comfortable for you, especially as you're starting out if you wanted to have that option. And so your contact is Nancy Chrisman in the financial aid office. She can help you with anything you need. And then given that things have been rather busy there, if any of you have been following the news around the FAFSA this year, it's been a little bit messy nationally for all colleges. So there's a lot of digging out. So if you want to make sure you get a hold of somebody in financial aid, the best way to reach them is that finaid@bastyr.edu email at the bottom. And they'll be able to get you somebody that can help with anything you need and processing your aid and so on. And we certainly encourage you over the coming months as you're thinking about Bastyr and other programs that if you'd like to talk to a faculty member more in depth or talk to a student, we can connect you there. Certainly come and tour campus. We do campus tours at both of our campuses if you'd like. And you have our campus bookstore as well. You can visit in Kenmore. Kenmore, I've been to both campuses, and Kenmore is in an old seminary. It's a really beautiful place with a cathedral in there. And so it's a nice place to stop. San Diego's nice too, Dr. Shuttleworth. Of course, you're not far from the beach down there, and it's a little warmer than Kenmore is. So definitely visit us at one of those campuses if you'd like. And certainly welcome now any questions that you might have. So Dr. Rosen and Dr. Shuttleworth are your program chairs as you've met. And then Daniel Van Arsdale, he's kind of hiding over there on our Zoom screen, but he's your enrollment advisor. And so he'll be helping you as you go through the application process and answering questions you need. And like I said, any question that you have, there's really nothing off limits. Just make sure you contact us so that we can assist you with anything you might need. So with that, I'll open it up for any additional questions. I saw that Dr. Rosen was answering a bunch in the chat, so that's great that you've been sticking on top of that. But if anybody else has any further questions, I see there are some chats here too, but I wanted to see if we missed anything. Let's stop the share so we can all be here, but any further questions that we can answer for anybody? I know there was some question about accreditation. I didn't know if you wanted to speak to that at all, Dr. Rosen.
Sure. So, oh, go ahead, Sylvie.
Do you want me to take that one?
Please.
Yeah, so what we had mentioned earlier in the webinar is one thing that is important is to have an awareness that we are regionally accredited. So that's our NWCCU accreditation. Then not required for most state licensures, but we did seek out a programmatic accreditation, and that's the MPCAC accreditation. You'll see in some states, they may list KCREP accredited or MPCAC accredited as their requirements for licensure, but many times, just make sure you read the whole thing. It'll also say, or an equivalent curriculum. So we did personally decide to seek out the MPCAC programmatic accreditation to make our program even more robust and to have an external agency reviewing what we're doing and making sure that we're on top of the most cutting edge curriculum design and facilitation. So we have chosen to take on, and we're very proud. It was many years in progress, and we have that MPCAC accreditation now in good standing.
Great. Yeah, so another question related to letters of recommendation. That's correct. There's no letters of recommendation required for the application for this program.
Yeah, and we used to actually have letters of recommendation required, and we strategically and purposefully decided not to do that anymore because we felt like it was a barrier in terms of accessibility for some students into the program and the validity of them, and looking at what ultimately seems to be a strong and successful student. It wasn't dependent on the letters of recommendation. So that was more of an evidence-based approach that we've taken and want to increase access and accessibility of our students to our program.
Well, I think we must have covered it all really well because I know, Dan, you've answered a bunch of questions and I think we're pretty good here, but any final thoughts, Dr. Rosen or Dr. Shuttleworth?
I would just add what you said a moment ago, Marcus, which is, we are available to talk further. And some of these conversations are more individually based. And so you have my email and Dr. Shuttleworth's email, and feel free to reach out and we can find a time to talk. I see one question that just popped up. I'll try to answer it. Goodness, the 2 years of the program, the question asked, it's meant to be completed strictly within 2 years. So does this mean we would not be able to take less classes, credits per quarter, or take a quarter off? Yes, Tessa, that is accurate. The program is really meant to be taken sequentially versus as a part-time student. So, so you're correct in that.
And if I could add, I mean, of course, we have students that may need a leave of absence and leave at some point and then would return later. And we have had some students that may defer their clinical training to a final year, but that would be pulling out just that clinical training piece. It would be over 3 years. So yes, sequential, we keep a cohort model, but there are nuances that can sometimes come up. And, Dr. Rosen mentioned about, reaching out to us, emailing us. That's something that's a little different, I would say, or as a standout of our program. A highlight of our program is much more personalized. And we know all of our students and we talk with them regularly. We meet with them, and even students that haven't been in the program yet. Like I had an hour and a half conversation the other day with an applicant, just getting to know them and answering their questions. So I think that's something that's nice, is you get a bit more of that personalized experience at Bastyr University, smaller class sizes, and all your instructors know you and you know us well.
Yeah, so I think we'd just like to say thank you so much for joining us, and we appreciate this opportunity, and we appreciate your time, and we look forward to connecting in the future.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great evening.